This is YG and the YG Stage. I'm your host, Andy Weins, President of Green Up Solutions. Today, we welcome Anna Oakes, CEO of Build High Performance Teams, to the stage. Young Guns is a growing group of business leaders and entrepreneurs that empower each other to grow their businesses, build their individual brands, and make an impact on their communities. YG Stage is one of 4 new shows brought to you by YG. Here we'll feature CEOs, business leaders, and other subject matter experts, maybe even you, to inspire, empower, and break the rules through innovation and entrepreneurship. Today, we welcome Anna Oakes to the stage. She builds high-performing teams from the change makers to the C-suites, traveling all over the entire country and world, making a difference by focusing on the humanity of individuals. Let's welcome Anna to the stage. And here you are on the YG Stage. What are we talking about today?
Oh man, we're going to talk about owning your career.
Yep.
And we're going to approach it from today's world being much more open with their sexuality and what we can learn from that to apply to our careers.
So we're going to talk about sexuality in the business world.
Sort of.
Right.
Sort of. Yeah.
I'm interested.
We're going to tie it together.
We're going to bring it together. Okay.
We are.
All right.
This is not sex ed.
Okay, because normally in HR we don't want to mix those things up.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Today we are.
Right.
This is why I was never really like the HR girl. I didn't super fit in there because I was always pushing the boundaries.
So you did corporate America for 20 years.
Yes, I did.
Okay, so it's going to be acceptable enough for the
Oh,
corporate
for
Americas,
sure.
but we're going to really change things up and shift things up today.
Yes. What we're talking about is times are changing in the world, and so should we.
I love it.
What's up?
Let's do it. This episode of YG is brought to you by Fleet Farm and Health Payment Systems.
Fleet Farm has everything you need for every season of life. From tending the vegetable garden season to planting 100 acres of crops season. Fleet Farm is your one-stop shop, whether it's strawberry jam season, cook your walleye season, or his first set of wheels season. Fleet Farm is built for every season. Fleet Farm, built for real life.
For more than 80% of families, today's medical billing practices are confusing. At HPS, our goal is to improve the healthcare experience for the patient by making medical bill payments less stressful. In Wisconsin, that's all made possible by our comprehensive independent healthcare provider network. We simplify billing and lower costs for everyone involved in healthcare and offer various ways for individuals to pay without breaking the bank.
All right, peeps. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and I find myself in some friendships in my life, and let's just talk about friendships with people in other relationships, romantic relationships. And something that I've noticed about them, and even a few people that I work with and coach, is that our sexuality has become much more fluid, right? So I have friends who are in legally married relationships, who are much more open in their marriage. I have friends who are dating and have open relationships. I have poly, I have gay, I have this, okay? So our sexuality is much more fluid. And so what I want to encourage you is I'm not going to try to convince you to put aside your thoughts about marriage or relationships. What I want you to do is see the world that has evolved around our sexuality and the permission that we've taken for ourselves as humans. And I want you to bring that into your work. I want you to bring that into your workplace and into the ownership that you have of your career. So today we're going to talk about how sexuality can help your work. All right, so here's the thing, guys. When we look at our sexuality, a lot of that is permission-based. And so I'm pretty sure that might be the last time I say sexuality, but we'll see. What I want you to think about here is giving yourselves permission to say, here's how I like to work. Here's how I like to be involved in the work that I do. Here are the other things I like to do in my life. And that permission makes up your patchwork. Not that you should be passionate about one thing, but that you can be passionate about multiple things in your life, and they can all fit together to create joy, to create satisfaction, and to create curiosity for what's next in your life. So let's just take a look at relationships. Okay, so we have systems, churches, schools, marriage, government, all of the systems that we sort of live and work in. They've been built and they've been that way for a number of years. But even our most coveted systems, like marriage, depending on what statistic you look at, 40 to 50% of marriages end in divorce. Yet we place all of our eggs in this one basket, thinking that this thing, this person, this system is going to make us happy. And I think we do the same thing with our careers. We look at our careers and we think, gosh, shouldn't this boss, shouldn't this job be completely fulfilling me? There's got to be something wrong with me. And my argument is there's not anything wrong with you. The situation is we have put our eggs in one basket, accepting a life partner, expecting that life partner to make us feel fulfilled. And we do the same thing with an employer. We want that boss to make us feel good about ourselves. We want that company that is somehow employing hundreds, maybe even thousands of other people, or let's even go startup and say like 8 other people. We expect them to know our individual needs and desires and completely fulfill them. It doesn't work. So we're asking an antiquated system, or at least a system that's built for more than just us, to somehow please us as individuals. So it's about time that we reclaim ownership of that career that we have. We reclaim and say that I have a choice to work here, and therefore I'm going to work in a way that best suits me. Now we're in the middle of sort of quarantine, so we're in 2020 when we're jamming on this talk. And so a lot has changed in the world of work. So some of it has to do with like how work happens. And so that's a good thing in the sense that we have taken a wrecking ball to the side of the system, the side of the building, and said like, this isn't working, or this can't work for us anymore. So when we did that, we had an abrupt disruption, right? We had a big disruption in our day-to-day. And we quickly said, how do we adapt our work to this new environment? But what some organizations did is they picked up their work and they put it into a virtual work environment, and they said, let's keep doing things the same way. All right, so they took their 10 hours a day of meetings and they put them all on Zoom. You have some organizations who said, we're actually going to do things a little differently. We're going to look at the humanity of our workforce, and we're going to make some accommodations because we know that you're now working from home with maybe a life partner or roommates, so we're going to be flexible for you, or maybe even children. We're going to be flexible for you. And so they said, let's not do 9 hours of meetings anymore. Let's see if we can get it done in less hours, right? So they're getting closer. They're getting closer to thinking, how can we work differently while still getting the same results, or maybe even better results? So the system started to adapt. We also saw the individual start to adapt, right? People had no other choice but to say, that's not going to work for me because of these other pressures that are on me, these other restraints or constraints that are on my life. So I'm not going to be able to meet your expectations there. So both the system and the individual started to adapt. And that's really what I'm asking for us as a human race to consider, is that this place that we spend the majority of our time, whether it's part-time or full-time, it doesn't matter. We're spending so much time in our work systems. Can we do it better? And so I want to talk first to the individuals, and then I want to talk to the organizations. So for the individuals, guys, here's the thing. I use a concept called entrepreneurs. It's not a word that I created. It's been around for a while, but depending on who you talk to, it means a few different things. So to me, I look at entrepreneurs and I think, how have they owned their career or displayed the same type of skill sets or mindsets that entrepreneurs who work for themselves do? How have they given themselves that ownership and permission to do the same but work within an organization? So guys, when we think about entrepreneurship, it is not a profile. It is not a skill set that you need to match. It's extroverted, it's this, it's charismatic. It's not. It's about using your skill set and giving yourself permission to own your career, to own your choices to work for a specific employer, to do a specific job, and do it in a way that you work best, right? Like I like a phrase called highest and best use. You want to work every day in a place that's going to put you in your highest and best use. And so the entrepreneurial attitude is just that. It is a lifestyle. It's a mindset. It's something that says, even if all the systems look like this, this is how I'm going to choose to do my work. So, similar to the couples that we talked about earlier who are choosing different structures for their relationship, you can choose something different for the way that you work. You might have grown up in a traditional 9-to-5, but you've been itching to do something on the side. Well, kudos for you, because we live in a gig economy where side hustles are prevalent. People are giving themselves permission to no longer be fueled by one job, but to also add in other things, right? So that's where my passion patchwork comes in. Like, I don't want you to think about one square on your quilt, right? If you had camo on one square, great. Maybe that's a large square, but you can add other textures and other colors on there. You can add side hustles, you can add hobbies, you can add relationships, you can add lovers, you can add whatever you want to that passion patchwork. And all of those things are what make you excited about the work you do every day, about how you're choosing to use your time, your energy, and your voice. Because that is your most precious commodity, and it belongs to no one else but you. And somehow we've given that away. We've said that when we sign our employment contract and somebody hands us a super vague one-page job description, that's our marching orders, that's the blueprint for our happiness, and it's not. You can do better than that. You can do better. When you make the decision to choose to work for an employer, you don't hand over your mind and your heart. You're giving them, you're lending them your resources. So when you reclaim them, like I did, I look back at my 20-year corporate career, I was a rebel, guys. I was the one who they were like, I'm not sure if we can handle this girl. And in reality, some of that was true, right? I was hard to handle. I was hard to manage, but I didn't need to be managed. I needed resources, support, and encouragement from my leader. I needed them to have my back. I needed them to act as a sponsor that said, not only am I going to mentor you and help you get better, I'm actually going to speak your name. I'm going to talk about your work in rooms. But the only way that I got that, guys, is because I had conversations with my leader. I told them what I was interested in. We talked about my varied passions in this world and how I was dreaming about doing this. Oh, and then 2 weeks later, I was dreaming about doing that. I gave myself permission to be fully me. Even in my quirkiness, even in my spazziness, this is who I am. So why hold back? Why start to fit into a mold that I'm never going to do? Never going to fit into that mold. So that permission, some of it conscious and some of it subconscious, really served me in the sense that as much as I filled their daily expectations, it was a yes and. Yes, I will do your job. And I will shake the trees internally and externally and give myself other things to work on. And when people ask me, like, how did you master corporate America? And I'm not sure I mastered it, but I did have a good relationship with it. In the sense that I took a job, I created space for myself, I asked people to do the same for me internally and externally, and then things happened. Jobs were created for me. I saw an opportunity. I created a job. Let me give you one example. So I was head of HR for a financial services firm, and I was leading 4 or 5 areas within HR, and I was coaching a lot of the executives, so that C-suite level internally, and acting as that internal coach. And I started to see some trends within the organization. And let me just preface that these trends I see pretty much in every organization that I work in, but I had enough data because I had such purview into the organization that said we had an efficiency and effectiveness problem. And so as the head of HR, I could have went over to IT or to finance and say like, hey, we should look over here. We're losing money over here. Our people just are not working as hard or as smart as they could. And I had those conversations, but I didn't bow out of the conversation. Instead, I wanted to be part of the conversation. I invited people to coffees that I hosted. I had conversations about this issue in a broader way and gave myself permission to take my HR hat off and say, how could I be part of a solution that could positively add value to this organization? And so by having those conversations, let me fast forward to you, 6 months later, we piloted an efficiency and effectiveness program within the company, which then got scaled. Over the next 2 years, we saved millions of dollars. Our engagement levels went up, our productivity went up, our cash levels went up. And I led the group as a side job, I did my day job, I led this group, I got involved, I hired somebody to take over that. They built the strategic change office. And I did that as part of a side hustle while I was working in HR because I gave myself permission to do it. So it's one example how when you see something that's happening, you add value, right? I don't stay in my lane, and I don't want you to either. And that's not the same as telling you not to do your job. I want you to do your job, and I want you to explore other lanes. I want you to take that initiative to truly make an impact. And there's two ways that you can do that. You can add value to the bottom line, or you can add value to the humans that work internally. Ideally, you're going to think of an idea or a project that's going to do both. And you're not going to get all your ideas forward, guys, but you're going to get some of them. And the ones that you don't are going to be seeds. Consider yourself a seed planter, that you are going to plant seeds within this organization that will long be watered after you leave. And that means that you may not always get to see the fruits of your labor, but that's okay too. Because every time you serve, every time you say yes within an organization, you grow and you learn and you get ready for your best next. Because you gave yourself permission, because you decided to add value in new and creative ways, you will be even more ready for your best next move whenever that comes. All right, guys, so we've talked about the permission that you need to give to yourself, but I'm not going to be naive and tell you that the incubator, the environment that you work in doesn't matter. And so I want to talk to the organizations, to the leaders, the people of organizations of all size. And I want to talk to you about how to create an environment where entrepreneurs, where people who actually want to make a bigger difference than they are right now, can live and breathe and grow. All right, so here's from a systems perspective, guys. There's a few things that you can do. And I want to reiterate that I'm talking to for-profits, nonprofits, churches, schools, government. I believe that this can work in any type of organization because I've seen it and I've done it. When we get back and we strip back all the complications of the rules, the policies, everything that we've ever built, and we say we're going to focus on humanity, things start to take flight, right? Almost think about a nature documentary that you watch, right? Where the owls eat the moles, and then this person eats the owl. It's part of the system, but somehow we've stopped. We've stopped sort of that nature, that natural thing that happens with humanity, and we put too many rules and regulations. So here's the thing. If we take a step back and we approach humanity, we can start with trust. And that seems so fluffy to you, I understand that, but that's the basis that you're trying to build. And what you've been trying to build as a leader is compliance. What you've been trying to build as an organization is status quo. And as much as I've seen you challenge yourselves to say, we want to do things differently, because I have people reach out to me almost every day, organizations who say, we know we could do better, and we want to come and improve our culture or our performance or both. And we start to have conversations about what that could look like. And then things get a little bit sticky because they realize that this is not one silver bullet answer that I can give you that says this is how you're going to do it. It's about the day-to-day actions and behaviors of your leadership and your employees. Because that's what makes up culture. It's not the values that you write on the wall. The culture is the outcome of the daily habits and behaviors of all of your people. So you can say something, but I want to know what you're going to do. And so this is where it comes to say, I'm not a leader who's here to tell you to do your job. I'm a leader who's here to provide the resources, support, and encouragement. Resources, support, and encouragement. And we do that by getting in the trenches with our people, by meeting regularly with them one-on-one, by creating micro environments within our organization. And I'm not saying that you have to create a strategic change office like I did. I don't want you to think you have to create an innovation team. Although I honor that those types of groups have their time and place within organizations, I'm actually encouraging you to think bigger than that. I want you to think about your whole organization, whether that's 8 people or 80,000 people, and you can change the culture. You can start to shift the way that people feel about their work. You can start to shift the way that they return the investment that you've made in them by simply starting with resources, encouragement, and support. And when you give yourself permission as a leader to no longer tell them how to do their job, to no longer manage their hours, but instead encourage them to make a bigger impact, you will see that your people light up. And the reason I know this, guys, is because I've been a people leader for over 20 years. I've been a leader of leaders. So it doesn't just happen with small teams. It doesn't just happen when you're like bootstrapping it like I am with my 4-person team right now. It sounds really easy when it's 4-person, and I promise you it's actually not any easier when it's 4 than when it was 400. Because it takes the same amount of intention, the same amount of attention to say, how am I as a leader going to approach each of these people individually and meet them where they're at and help them get where they want to go? Because it is an individual journey, and this is where I lose some of the leaders, because it sounds even harder than what they're doing today, and it is. And maybe it's not harder, but it is different. It's learning a different way of leadership that is more humanity and less systems-based. It's more about outcomes and less about hours. It's more about trust and tethering them to the organization so that they feel good, not so that they'll stay. So there's 2 things that I want you to think about when you're a leader: communication and accountability. So I could list 500 books for you to read and a bunch of studies and research, but it all comes back to 2 things that you think you're doing and you're not. You're not communicating effectively, and you're not holding people accountable. And when you hear me say communication and you hear me say accountability, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking like a lot of talk and then a lot of like finger wagging. And I want you to backtrack that for a second, because communication to me is about a connection that you're building with your people individually, as a team, and then as an organization. And you have to think about it on those 3 levels. And if you aren't seeking help from a communications expert or from your internal people in HR or your employee resource groups, you should start doing that, because you will start communicating better when you start listening better. When you start paying attention to the things that your people like and don't like, when you start asking questions about what's happening outside of their lives, you will start communicating better because you have more data. You don't have enough data right now to engage your people, to communicate with them effectively. So go get the data by listening and then talking. Now, from an accountability standpoint, again, I don't want you to think that I'm talking about the hammer. I'm not. Accountability happens in really natural, organic ways when you've built the trust and when you're communicating effectively. Because if I'm leading you and something goes wrong with a project and I never talk to you, and suddenly I'm approaching you and I don't understand maybe the complexities that are happening in your personal life at this time, if I don't understand fully what I put on your plate and maybe other people within the organization have put on your plate, I don't have enough data to hold you accountable. I'm coming at you with a wag of the finger telling you to get your shit together over here, when maybe over here is not that important anymore. Or maybe over here is so important that the other things aren't. So as a leader, again, it goes back to the data that you have so that you can make better decisions around communication, so that you can make better decisions around accountability, because accountability is important. It's where things went awry with the sexual misconduct within organizations. It's where things have gone awry with the racial injustice that happens within systems. It's because there isn't enough communication. There isn't enough listening. There isn't enough accountability that says, hey, we've tried to give you the resources and encouragement and support that you deserve as a human, but it's just not going to work. And you know why we don't say that? Is because organizations know they haven't given enough. Organizations know they don't do the day-to-day hand-holding, pat on the back, smile, and listen. They don't do enough of that so that when we come in to hold people accountable, it feels much more about focusing on the bottom line versus taking care of our humans who actually contribute to the bottom line. So guys, this comes back to this topic of where as humanity we are evolved. And yes, I used one example of sexuality. I could use a lot more with you today. But I want you to think about that in 2 ways, both as an individual and as a system. How do we give ourselves more permission to do things that work for me? This is what's going to work for me, and it doesn't have to work for you or you. It has to work for me. Because as far as I know right now, this is the one life we're given. So if I'm going to choose to spend my time working for an organization as an entrepreneur or as myself as an entrepreneur, I want to be around people. I want to be in a system that works for me. And that is up to me to find that. It is up to me to help build that. But the organization has to provide the type of environment where I'm going to thrive, or I will go find the environment where I can. And as an organization, if you look around and you're not impressed with the type of talent that you have working for your organization, or you know you can do better, you can start taking ownership. You can start doing things differently, to start with who you have, to give them better, to give them differently than you have given them, so that you can help them get to their best next. And by the way, when you do that, they help you get to your best next. So I encourage you all to give yourself much more permission to be the employee that you know you can be, to be the leader that you know you can be, because you're the only one that can do that. You are the one that owns your time, your talents, your voice. Use it wisely, use it well. Sending you guys peace and progress.
All right, Anna, phenomenal. I wasn't sure how you're going to tie it all together, and you brought it all, putting the responsibility on the individual to be an advocate for themselves,
Completely.
and the organization to create an environment where that individual can thrive. That's what I got out of it. Is that pretty consistent?
And that goes back to the sexuality conversation, Andy, where it's like, it does take two. You have to be in agreement or it's not going to work.
And it's kind of uncomfortable.
It is, but it's what happens in today's world, so we should be talking about it. And even if you don't want to talk about sexuality, that's okay. You do have to talk about permission. And that we're in a time as an evolved human species where we should be reclaiming some of that stuff that we've given away over the years. We've been a part of systems that haven't been serving everybody who's a part of those systems. So what could we rethink about those systems?
And you just said that, like, when in regard to the sexuality or the permissions, you're saying, well, now in this time. No, I think it's always been there.
Yeah.
Right? But
Yeah.
we haven't talked about it.
No, sure.
With everything going on in the world now, this is our opportunity as employers, as employees, to have those conversations.
Right.
And going back to what you said, permissions.
Yeah.
Allowing people to be themselves, because when they are themselves, they're going to be more effective than when you try to put a round peg in a square hole.
Exactly.
Thanks to Anna Oakes for taking the YG stage. Are you ready to be on the stage, or do you know someone that is? Help us feature the best speakers around by going to younggunsmovement.com and apply to be on the show. This is your chance. Apply now and you might be featured on an upcoming episode. YG Stage is sponsored by Fleet Farm and Health Payment Systems. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow Young Guns Movement to stay tuned with all the content on the way. Again, I'm your host, Andy Weins, president of Green Up Solutions. Thank you for joining us here on the YG Stage.